Hey guys, how you going? It's Nathan here from FVR Contracting. I'm up on the west coast of Cape York at the moment doing a cat control program as a part of a conservation project. I've had quite a few inquiries on social media about what thermal units I've been using and what equipment I've been using for feral cats. So tonight I'm just going to do a quick review, or rather a comparison, on a couple of the thermal units that we do use a fair bit. We've got a fair degree of brand loyalty to Pulsar in terms of the thermal equipment that we use, because we've been using it for a number of years now with no failures, good accuracy and some good features on the system. So tonight I'll just quickly talk about the differences between the XQ38 Trail model and the XP50 Trail model. Basically the real difference is price, ultimately. So the XQ38 comes in at the lower end of the range price-wise. Here I've got one fitted on a Wedgetail Industries WT25 semi-automatic rifle. So dimension-wise, between this and an XP50, you're not going to see a lot of difference. The external dimensions are roughly the same, buttons are in the same places, that type of thing. So there's not a lot of point in going through the the layout and that type of stuff. You can pretty much see that on any of the websites that sell these things. Ours have been bought through Wolfeyes Torches, who've done some really good deals for us as a part of the business. But yeah, that's certainly stuff you can read in your own time. This is the XP50. So again, this is mounted currently on a Wedgetail Industries WT15. Now, not a lot of difference dimension-wise. You can see on top here, that little unit there. That's a laser rangefinder, which is extant on all of the current models, including the 38s. So yeah, not a great deal of difference from an appearance point of view. So what's probably easier, I'll just talk about some of the things that are common between the units in general. So the controls and where the buttons sit on the Pulsar Trail series, they're common across the whole range. So whether it's an XQ38, XQ50, XP38 or an XP50, all the same. They all have a 50 Hz refresh rate, so you get a pretty clear, constant image while you're looking through the unit. And certainly in terms of if you haven't used thermal, they need to refresh to update the actual system itself on the difference between the temperature of likely and potential targets and ambient temperature. So that refresh rate on these is nice and quick and clear, and you can set it to automatic, semi-automatic or manual, depending on the scenario and what you're doing with the thermal unit at that point in time. They all use a Stream Vision app, which is a pretty simple app you can download off either Google Play or the App Store with Apple, which is actually a really good app. That's for transferring all your imagery, your videos, and while we're on that, they both have the same functionality in terms of the ability to take photos, video, record it. They have a recall record feature. Most of the modern scopes do nowadays, which is all pretty good. So no differences there in terms of any of that. They're waterproof units, dust proof. I'm not sure what the IP rating is, but I've certainly had mine out in proper heavy North Queensland rain a number of times and had no issues with it. And yeah, not a single occasion, multiple occasions, and they're certainly up to the task there. And I believe that's one of the differences you'll find with a Pulsar Trail over many of the other units that are advertised. They probably don't have that level of robustness or ability to be used on a more commercial scale than some of the other units do. That said, there's a lot of good stuff coming on the market nowadays. It just happens to be that Pulsar's the gear that I've been using. Battery life is interesting. So I haven't noticed any real difference between an XQ38 and an XP50 at all. These units are fantastic. So they operate an uncooled microbolometer as a primary sensor on the unit. And what we're tending to find, we don't tend to run our thermal all night, but we'll be running for 10 to 12 hours of control work, and during that time the unit might be on for 3 to 4 hours in total, and we're nowhere near halfway through our battery life on either of the units. So that's certainly a pretty good indicator of the capability that exists there. There are a couple of other newer thermal scopes coming out that appear to be smaller, 30mm tubes on them, and in the Pulsar range that's called the Thermion. There's an XP and an XM model. A number of good features about those, but obviously whilst the Trail might appear a little bit bulkier than those units, it certainly has a longer battery life, which is obviously something which is a consideration if you're going to be running your thermal for long periods of time at night. So they're basically some of the similarities between the units. I'll just go through some of the things that are a little bit different between the XP and the XQ models, and in particular the 38 and the 50. So probably the single biggest difference between these units, other than the price, is going to be the resolution. So your XQ38 is going to operate at 384 by 288. It's pretty good. So on the lower magnification levels, you can certainly see targets clearly. No issues on anything with the high ambient temperature, identifying the edges of it or anything like that, out to 100-150 metres. And I've successfully used mine on dogs and cats at around 200 metres with no real issues, although it's starting to get a little bit fuzzy there if you're going to dial the magnification up. The XP50 operates at 640 by 480, so that's roughly double the resolution of the XQ model. And you can certainly see the difference looking through the scope. So as part of this comparison, I'm not going to put up a bunch of footage of either targets or animals being humanely destroyed, because it doesn't really value add in a video sense. You can't really see the difference once it's been uploaded onto YouTube or processed in any other way. But looking through it practically, you can really see a big difference. There's a lot of clarity at close range. You can really see the edges of things. And probably the main advantage, other than the ability to have a less fuzzy image when you upscale your magnification, is the fact that you can distinguish the edges of other things like cover, branches, grass, etc., which might have a lower ambient temperature difference, which makes it easier to avoid hitting obstacles when you're engaging a target, which is certainly a useful feature. While we're on that issue of mag range between the two units, so that's definitely a big difference between the XQ and the XP models. So your XQ is running a bottom end magnification at 2.1, and then it ranges through, and it's adjustable up to 8.4. Your XP runs from 1.6 up to 12.8 for the XP50 model. So there's a few things to talk about there. People generally think that higher magnification is a really good thing. It really depends what you're doing with the optic. So if you're doing a lot of scanning with your optic, there's certainly an advantage in having a lower bottom end. That lower bottom end allows you to basically see more when you're scanning, so it's not so much of moving the optic around to pick up targets, etc. But obviously you need to dial up if you're going to engage any targets out at a little bit further range. 2.1 at the bottom level is not too high. That's pretty good. But then you see on some of the other models that are getting around now, you start to look at bottom ends of around 3.5 or 4 power, which are quite high from a scanning perspective, although good from a shooting perspective, and then you dial up from there. Obviously with these thermal units, they have what they call their native magnification range, which is basically what the unit's set up on. So on the 50, and that's a bottom end magnification, and everything from there up is digital enhancement. So the image loses a degree of clarity when you scale up on it. It's not really a big issue for these Pulsar trails, so they jump in increments up to their top magnification at the press of a button. Yeah, and it's certainly not something you need to worry about too much. So yeah, but clearly a difference in terms of the optics there. The other issue, which is not really a war stopper between these two units, and it's more to do with the size of the sensor than the actual units or anything like that, is the detection range. So the XP50, because it has a 50mm microbolometer, has a detection range of 1800 meters. And the XQ38, again, because of that microbolometer, has a detection range of 1350 meters. Now, that really is a bit of a non-issue in terms of what you're going to encounter in the Australian bush. Really, you generally can't see much further than 500-600 meters if you're in any sort of environment that has trees or cover or anything else that has an ability to provide thermal protection to a target, i.e. you can't see through it with a thermal scope. If you're out somewhere really open, like a beach or a swamp or a floodplain or an open field or something like that, yep, you'll pick up heat further out with the XP50. But the reality is it's about detection and aiding in your ability to pick up targets. And there is, once you get used to sort of using these units, you'll identify that sometimes you actually, to pick up the heat, it's easier to pick it up, particularly on a small target like a cat or a small dog or something like that. You need the magnification to be up a little bit to pick it up in the first place and have it pop out against ambient temperature or what's around it. So the final factor that's sort of pretty well obvious is the pricing on these units. So looking at the Wolfeyes webpage on recommended retail, so you're looking at the current model of the XQ38, which has a laser rangefinding unit also on that, at $5,750. The XP50 LRF retails for $8,200. So you're looking at a fairly reasonable sort of $2,500 gap between the two units. I guess the key question comes down to is the juice worth the squeeze in terms of the additional pricing. It depends what you're using it for. Certainly, there's no bones about it. The XP50 is a better unit in terms of overall versatility, magnification range, and the resolution is certainly excellent. The XQ38 isn't the disadvantage that many people probably think it is from reading the specs. So we've compared these side by side a number of times in terms of detecting animal targets, in terms of being able to shoot at around 150, 200 metres. And whilst there's advantages to the more expensive unit, you can still complete all those tasks to a very satisfactory standard with the XQ38. So I guess if you're planning on using thermal occasionally, and it's an enhancement to what you're doing in terms of recreational hunting, and you're conscious of your budget, I probably wouldn't worry about going the extra distance and getting an XP50 or one of the XP models in general in terms of that jump up in cost. If you're doing it all the time and night hunting's your thing and thermal's really where you want to go, or you're looking for a professional option, then hands down I'd certainly be having a look at the XP line. There's also an XP38, there's also an XQ50, but yeah, you are going to pay a little bit of a premium in terms of the dollars that comes with that quality. So yeah, really comes down to personal choice there. So hopefully that's been helpful. It's not really, this comparison wasn't designed to sort of be a detailed in-depth review of the capabilities of the units. I'll be posting up at the end of this year another video which will have basically a heap of the the gun reel tape or kill tapes of humane destruction using these thermal optics. I've got one on the YouTube channel at the moment from 2018. That gives you an idea of the sorts of capabilities you can achieve using thermal. I can certainly say that regardless of which type of unit you have a look at, and potentially whichever brand you look at, if you're buying one of the better spec thermal units of any nature, and your experience previously has been either spotlighting or it's been the use of night vision equipment, either with IR or just on its own using ambient light, you pick up thermal for the first time, you're going to be blown away with the capability that it represents. It certainly is a massive step up from a pest control point of view, to the point where there's no going back and having a look at other techniques now. It's a case of pretty much every opportunity I have to use or to conduct a night control task, thermal gets used on it. It's an absolute game changer. So hopefully that's been helpful. Yeah, if you have any questions, please pop them down in the comments section or message me on Facebook or Instagram, and I'll answer those where I can. Thanks.